Hello everyone, I'm Lance Spelderall and I'd like to present a slide on fake news. So today we're going to be talking about who is Gary Welch and why is his death important. So Gary Welch was a 53-year-old attorney who also had an important blog. So a new poll shows Trump up in India by 9 points, and this is his last blog. Let's look at it right now. If I'm not around to see the vote results, my prediction is that Trump wins Indiana with just shy of 50% of the vote, but he will carry every single congressional district and sweep the delegate race, assuming the party-chosen delegates honor their rules-bound commitment to support the winner on the first ballot. Most of those delegates favored John Kasich at the time they were chosen. Only 2 of the delegates named by the state party officials publicly declared their support for Trump, although some have indicated they would feel obligated to support the voters' wishes. So, if I'm not around to see the vote results, my prediction is that Trump wins. This was Gary Welch's last blog, and that's what he thought of. And Trump did win, as we see today. So, is this a suicide note, or did he know that forces outside of his control, were going for him? Or we're about to get to him in the first place. Well, Gary Welch, a lawyer who managed his Advance Indiana blog since 2005, was found in his Indianapolis apartment around 8 a.m. Sunday with a gunshot wound. Now here is the rest of the story. Here's what we were told from that story. The police were called to an apartment building in the 400 block of North Park Avenue shortly before 8 a.m. Sunday on a report of a person shot. Police dispatch stated that the caller observed what they believed to be a person shot in the stairwell of the building with the gun still laying on the scene. Now, the police report said the person was shot, who was confirmed, and the victim was pronounced deceased at the scene by the medics, which was Welch, 53, was a lawyer and had been blogging since 2005. He's a conservative, and he explained his motivation in the 2007 post, in which he began the blog 17 months ago as a way of communicating his discontent with the political state of affairs in Indiana. So the police think Pundit's death was a suicide. Because of this, if I'm not around to see the vote results, Welch wrote, my prediction is that Trump wins. Well, after Welch posted his message on Friday, several readers expressed concern. By the way, Gary should read any foreboding in your wounds about if you are around for the election results. Take care of yourself, please, wrote Mary Catherine Barton, in which an anonymous source responded, Mary Catherine, thank you for responding. Thank you for posting the questions. Gary's safety. I was thinking the same thing, and I thought I had posted it. So the man who connects Ted Cruz's dad with Lee Oswald dies the Sunday before the Indiana primary. Look at the facts, and then you decide. Is this a suicide, or was this planned out from the beginning? Well, here we go again. Here is the connection with Gary Webb. So it was just after Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Gary Webb contacted his editor and said he also was investigating the firm Affiliated Computer Systems and wanted us to share notes that he was reported to have died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head at the Carmichael, California home. ACS was involved in processing the U.S. student visas for alleged 9/11 hijackers Mohammed Atta and his compatriots. Before even launching a full investigation, Indianapolis police are calling the sudden death of Indiana political blogger Gary Welch a suicide. Never mind the fact that it was Welch who was the initial source of the WMR's recent story on Florida Senator Marco Rubio's foam bath exploits in South Beach, Miami. So looking into the connections, we have this. Ironically, there was an Indianapolis connection to Gary Webb's death, and the company he was targeting, ACS Incorporated, had as its vice president Stephen Goldsmith, a former mayor of Indianapolis. So here's an email I'd like to show to Wayne Madsen. Indianapolis police may also be interested in Welch's last email to this editor, dated April 11, 2016. Great catch on his Cruz's ties to Oswald in New Orleans. I always thought the odds were pretty good of the old man having ties to the CIA, if not Cruz's mother as well, since he was immediately able to get a great education at the University of Texas right after he arrived here and then went to work in the oil industry as a computer programmer. It never made sense to me how he and Eleanor wound up in Calgary and then later returned to the U.S., and he suddenly becomes a Christian minister, although he's never actually had a church he could call his own. Who has been paying Raphael all of these years to advocate his dominionist views and now tell evangelical voters that his son was anointed by God, as foretold in the Bible? You can't make this stuff up. You know the media is just waiting until if and when Cruz gets the nomination before it unloads on him. was Eleanor's first husband and intelligence officer as well. Well, his blog went from local to global conspiracies. By 2010, about half of the stories on Advance Indiana focused on global plots and secret societies. The U.S. government staged the Boston Marathon bombing. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia was murdered. Ted Cruz's father will somehow have been involved in JFK's assassination. And according to Welsh's partner Littmer, Welsh went to bed listening to conspiracy theory radio shows such as Alex Jones and InfoWars. Welsh developed plenty of his own speculations too, which made Wayne Madsen, a prominent conspiracy theory blogger, named Welsh as his source for a recent story suggesting that former president candidate and family value conservative Marco Rubio had attended gay foam bath parties in Miami in the 1990s. Such posts undoubtedly hurt Welsh's credibility with locals who read the blog for legitimate news, but it sent the number of daily visitors into the thousands. Friends mostly dismissed the conspiracy theory stuff as entertainment, but Welsh's friend James Klimek, an attorney who worked across the hall from him, notes that occasionally the wild allegations proved true. Gary had this theory that former city council president Burt Servas was in the CIA, Klimek says. And everybody thought, Gary, that's one of your farther out ideas. Then Servas retired. He was given a special commendation for his work for the CIA. So toward national political blogs, Marco Rubio went reportedly a very extroverted homosexual during his youth in South Beach, Florida, according to GOP insiders speaking to InfoWars correspondent Wayne Madsen. One of the GOP insiders told that Madsen about the story was Gary Welsh. Despite billing himself as a lifelong Christian to conservative and evangelical voters, Rubio apparently participated in gay foam parties during the early to mid-1990s at gay entertainment venues such as the Warsaw Ballroom and Amnesia, in which scantily clad men were covered in suds to camouflage homosexual acts, Madsen reported. Well, at Amnesia, Kitty Meow, a drag queen, would officiate over the foam parties, directing participants what to do. Madsen revealed some foam party participants only wore jock straps. So as you can see, all these ideals were being contradicted from his earlier past times. The stories of Gary's death do not add up at all, because this is an interesting bit of information I'd like to bring up. One of these stories where you have to gather up all of the bits and pieces and put the puzzle together. Well, Gary Welsh was an attorney in Indiana who also wrote a political blog. He was found shot to death early in May, and the death was the first called in as a murder, but then ruled as a suicide even though the victim had 2 shots at the back of his head. How hard is that to do? Just trying to get my hand around the back of my head where it could be holding a gun back there seems difficult when I try to check out the possibility. And then we also have to believe that he was able to shoot himself twice that way before he died. As you can see, these things don't clearly add up. It isn't convenient for him, nor is it very plausible. Those were the rumors, and the truth was 1 shot to the chest. The death of the prominent Indianapolis political blogger Gary Welsh 3 weeks ago has officially been ruled a suicide, with Marion County Coroner's Office said. Welsh, who wrote the popular conservative blog Advance Indiana, died May 1st of a gunshot wound. He was 53. Indianapolis police said that they investigated his death as a tragic suicide. The coroner's office said it issued a death certificate Thursday that listed suicide as the official cause of Welsh's death. Well, the official manner of death was listed as a single gunshot wound to the chest, and the coroner's office said that the final rulings confirmed preliminary findings. Welsh's body was found in a stairwell at the Lockerbie Glove Factory Lofts, 430 North Park Avenue, and witnesses who called 911 to report the death said a gun was found next to his body. Welsh was a practicing attorney who launched Advance Indiana more than a decade ago, and he was known for hard-hitting blog posts that were very controversial. Now, this shot to the chest was found outside of the apartment without ID. Did Gary Welsh get too close to the truth? Because when you surmise the truth from Colonel's information, think about this. 1, Gary was found without ID in the stairwell of his apartment, and 2, he went outside of his house to kill himself. This is a very uncommon behavior. Normally you would do it in your house, or normally you shot yourself in the head. Well, think about this. He answered the door, went to the door, and no one was there. Then a knock at the door again. He got his pistol and went to the door. He was overpowered or coaxed to come outside and was shot execution style with one shot right in the heart. Which idea makes more sense to you? The fact that a person would just come outside after years of political blogging and just shoots himself in the head, or someone shooting him in the body? Here are the murder suspects. One suspect in the murder is Senator Rubio of Florida, whose campaign fizzled when his homosexual lifestyle was exposed by Welsh. During his youth, Rubio attended gay foam parties, as we've said before, and Welsh's body was found in a stairwell with a gun near his body. But police immediately declared it a suicide, which means that Mayor, Police Chief, and Governor Mike Pence are among powerful political entities as suspects in the murder, which the motive for which may be revenge against Welsh's disclosures against him. Jeb Bush's crimes and murders for the CIA are well documented, stretching back to the mid-1970s. Well, Ted Cruz's father is Rafael Cruz Jr., who was involved in the murder of President Kennedy in Dallas, Texas. To avoid the draft in 1967, he fled to Canada. We suspect that the real reason for his flight was to avoid subpoenas by District Attorney Jim Garrison, who investigated and indicted Clay Shaw for his part in the murder of the president. Without any doubt, the Indiana Police Department is part of the murder and cover-up. Now, where have you heard multiple murder suspects before? People who have gained a great deal from that person being eliminated, and then police cover-ups? Well, this is another JFK story that we have unfolding. This death may bring up a larger question. Why, after 54 years, is the National Inquiry investigating JFK's death and not more mainstream media outlets? Well, according to their own website, the National Enquirer is for the exclusive up to the second celebrity news, entertainment gossip, and the hottest Hollywood happenings anywhere as they happen. But they have done a great deal of research on JFK, some of it nothing more than reposting of theories and pictures. Some of it is original research, such as this, the early or traditional type of Enquirer, as you can see from the headings. And here's more of those investigations, such as scientists confirming the facts and terrifying rumors. These are the modern JFK National Inquirer stories I'd like to bring up now. As you can see, most of this stuff is just reposted from some conspiracies you can find. So how is National Inquiry doing such research? Well, let's look into that. Inquirer has Officer Roscoe White shooting JFK, and Roscoe White and his wife, in which Genevieve, his wife, said neither of us slept well before the assassination. He kept on tossing and turning, so I asked him what was the matter. He told me that it was like war. If he didn't take out the president, he would be in nuclear war, and he loved his wife too much to allow them all to die like that. So this is information, or is it excellent research? So let's look at a new JFK theory, of which the CIA ordered ex-cop to kill the president. So on August 7, 1990, by Paul Weingarten's Chicago Tribune, in Dallas, Ricky White, a 29-year-old unemployed oil equipment salesman, added his version Monday to the vast, arcane, and still thriving field of John F. Kennedy assassination conspiracy theories. Flanked by a full-length photograph of Jack Ruby and the famous shot of Lee Harvey Oswald brandishing his rifle, White declared at a packed news conference that his father shot the president from the infamous grassy knoll on orders from the CIA. White said his late father, former Dallas police officer Roscoe White, who died in 1971 of burns suffered in a fire, had kept a secret diary of his undercover intelligence activities, in which he related details of how he had been one of 3 assassins assigned to shoot Kennedy on November 22, 1963. Oswald, widely believed to be the sole assassin, was involved in the plot but did not fire any shots at Kennedy, according to White's claims. Since discovering his father's diary in 1982, the knowledge has been eating me apart. I don't think of him as a bad person. He was an individual I loved and deeply admired. He was told by our government to do something, and you don't question the government. The CIA called White's allegations ludicrous. This individual who is mentioned, Roscoe White, was never employed by the CIA or associated in any way with the agency, of which CIA spokesman Mark Mansfield said, "We normally never confirm or deny employment, but these allegations are so outrageous that we felt it was necessary and appropriate to respond." So they never confirmed or denied his employment. They just responded to this whole thing. And more on that, the diary had since disappeared. White contends an FBI agent pilfered it, and the FBI denies it. Of course, they would deny it if it were true. In the diary, the younger White said his father, codenamed Mandarin, described how he fired 2 shots from the grassy knoll area in front of the Kennedy motorcade, and that the 2 other CIA operatives fired 2 shots from each of the Texas School Book Depository and a nearby county records building. So the account contradicts the conclusions of the Warren Commission, obviously, which found that only 3 shots were fired, all from behind the motorcade. A later House Select Committee on Assassinations report said 4 shots had been fired, 1 from the grassy knoll, but that was later disrupted by the National Academy of Sciences, in which White said his father also claimed in his diary that he, not Oswald, shot Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. According to police and news accounts, Tippit confronted Oswald before he fled into a Dallas movie theater. Police charged Oswald in Tippit's death, and this spring, White said a cryptic message in his late father's Marine footlocker led him to the final clues. Hidden in a steel strongbox behind warped wallboards in the attics of his grandparents' former home in Paris, Texas. That strongbox contained 3 faded cables, purportedly from the Office of Naval Intelligence, instructing Roscoe White that his next assignment would be to eliminate a national security threat to worldwide peace. Well, there you have it. The National Enquirer proved wrong or right by the mainstream media. Well, let's look at more of these headings. Were they wrong when they said that LBJ and Nixon killed JFK? Were they wrong about all these headings? And were they wrong when they linked the death of Officer Tippit with the JFK plot? Well, note the chin and square chin. This was not Oswald's chin at all. All of these evidence add up, as we discussed in previous presentations. Even the Dallas coroner discusses Lee Harvey Oswald's autopsy about how there's some off things about some of the pictures and the autopsy. Here are his funeral records. No, Robert broadcast it, but they were asked that they could hold it. Oswald in the morgue after the autopsy, and these are more pictures of him in the funeral home of November 25. As you can see, these 2 people don't look the same at all. They're very different. So there are multiple things wrong with these pictures. 1, the morgue Oswald was much thinner than funeral Oswald. 2, funeral Oswald was much shorter than Marine Oswald. And 3, the recovered Oswald teeth matches Oswald's dental records, but not the autopsy one. And finally, 4, Oswald recovered in multiple pieces in 1981, of which it does not look like funeral Oswald at all. Compare the teeth in each. Are they the same? And this is the burial. As you can see, they're covering up a very different body from the other photos that you've seen. Here you saw a steel vault buried with a casket in it. Well, originally, it was planned to remove both the casket and the cement burial vault intact to transport them to the vault company to be opened, and then to proceed to Baylor. The doctor's report, from which this information is largely drawn, notes that backhoes began shortly after dawn and work are as speedily as safe and possible for better security, and to allow the cemetery to open for regular visitation as possible. Even despite the early hour, a small crowd had gathered at Rose Hill Cemetery. When the vault was exposed, it was immediately noted to be cracked, not broken open, as later reports had it. The plan to transport the intact vault and casket was abandoned, and workers removed the lid of the concrete vault, finding the casket to be severely water damaged. It is noted in the report that the cover was weak in many areas, and in one place had caved and partially exposing the remains. As you can see from these multiple photos here of the casket and the vault. And even Oswald's body was exhumed in 1981. So what do they find when they exhume his body? Well, they find this. This is a picture of his coffin exhumed. Oswald's head is separate from the body, and the casket had been broken into from the bottom. These are very suspicious pictures, and who would break into it? This is Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin of John F. Kennedy. He died in 1963. The body exhumed and was to confirm identity, and ante-mortem and postmodern dental records were used as all other tissue was decomposed. So let's look more on the casket. Original pine coffin that held the body of Lee Harvey Oswald from his burial on November 25th, 1963 until exhumation on 4th October 1981. Amidst conspiracy theories that the look-alike Russian agent was actually buried in place of Oswald, a fierce legal battle erupted between Robert and Marina Oswald, with the former trying to stop the exhumation and the latter pushing it forward. Marina's side prevailed, forcing an exhumation to determine who was actually buried in the grave in the first place. As Lee Harvey Oswald's coffin was lifted, evidence of extensive water damage to the casket was apparent. The cover was weak in many areas, and in one place had caved in, partially exposing the remains. The coffin's wood exterior was very soft from moisture damage and had dark areas of discoloration. Visible along the sides were the tarnished original metallic ornamentation, and the interior of the casket was also showed splotchy, dark discoloration. As you can see, a lot of things were wrong with this casket, but there is clear signs of it breaking through the bottom. And the corpse was almost completely decomposed, but that didn't matter because the only thing they really needed was Oswald's head. So let's look at Grudy's story on Oswald's burial. In an interview with this writer, Jack White recalled his first meeting with Grudy. I had previously known Paul Grudy because he had asked our ad agency to submit an ad proposal for his business a year or so previous to the exhumation, which, if I remember, was 1981. White continued, Grudy spotted me in the stands and came over and told me the same basic story, which is well known. His story concerned what he saw during the exhumation and later in the examination room at Baylor Medical Center, both prior to and after the forensic exam. As the mortician of the record, it was his job to identify the body as one that he had prepared in 1963, and after the examination to place the body in a new casket for transport back to the gravesite. Yes, Grudy was very confident that the body would be in good shape for identification. One researcher who has probably studied the exhumation events more closely than anyone is Gary Mott, who is now the curator of the Sixth Floor Museum in Dallas. He remembered in a 2000 interview that Grudy gave several interviews during the exhumation attempts over the years, claiming that he overbalmed Oswald on the chance that someone may indeed try to dig him up someday. This jives with White's memory as well, because he embalmed the body with several times the usual amount of the formaldehyde, so the body would be well preserved for all time. The first sign of trouble from Grudy's perspective came when the burial vault of Oswald was brought to the surface. Grudy made the following observation in his now famous TMWKK segment. At the time of the 63 burial time, I put Lee Harvey Oswald in a steel-reinforced concrete vault. The vault was hermetically sealed. The vault is guaranteed not to break, crack, or go to pieces. It's heavy concrete with steel in it with an asphalt lining. And when I opened the grave in 81, I found that the vault had been broken, and the bottom of the vault was partly broken. The top was still intact, and I noticed that at the time the casket had been disturbed. Essentially, this confirms our findings that someone had messed with the casket, if even the person who prepared his body knew that there was obvious changes to it as well. I sent my wife, Virginia, to Marina to tell her, yes, there was a body in that grave because that was her concern. So let's look at the testimony of people involved in the exhuming. This is Grudy's testimony himself. At the time of the 63 burial time, I put Lee Harvey Oswald in a steel-reinforced concrete vault. The vault was hermetically sealed, essentially meaning that he was very confident that nothing would have happened over the years. Similarly, researcher Greg Burnham claimed in a recent TV documentary, there's no earthquakes, of course, in Texas that would have caused a crack in this 2,700-pound steel-reinforced concrete vault, yet it had been compromised. Grudy has more comments on this, of which he says, I noticed at the time the casket had been disturbed, I questioned in my own mind what had been going on. Perhaps it has been somehow damaged when the coffin and vault were lowered into the grave and someone kept it as a souvenir. And then we did go to Baylor. There was an examination by a medical person who was there for forensic pathologist, and she determined that yes, these were the teeth of Lee Harvey Oswald, but it took 2 years for her to make that determination before the report was actually done. Here are more pictures of the damages to the casket, of which he was so confident nothing would have happened. In 17 years, his body goes from this to this in 1981. When you were embalmed and buried in this, it doesn't make any sense except if you want to only ID the body by dental records. Clearly, the teeth did not add up any more than much of the other evidence we've established. Exhuming the body leads to even more question. Not everyone was convinced. During the examination at Baylor, Paul Grudy, the mortician who had prepared Oswald for the burial, had been asked to verify whether the body in the coffin was the same one he had embalmed. At the time, he agreed that it was, but later on, he had his doubts. A few days after the exhumation, Grudy was discussing the events with his assistant, Alan Baumgartner, when both men realized that they hadn't seen a key detail on the corpse's head. Neither had noticed the craniotomy line crevice created when morticians saw the top of the skull to examine the brain, and the mark was a way of sticking around, and sometimes leads to the skull cap to fall off during decomposition. Both men were sure that a craniotomy had been performed on Oswald, and yet the skull was there. Yet neither Grudy nor his assistant can remember seeing the mark. So this is the head in the box theory. Grudy shared his concerns with assassination researchers, and together they developed a theory. Eddowes looked uninspired, while Grudy agreed that the body buried in Oswald's grave was the same one he embalmed. He wasn't so sure about that the body buried in Oswald's grave was the same one he embalmed, and he wasn't so sure about the head at all. He believed that the KGB, CIA, FBI, or someone else dug up the corpse in Oswald's grave before the 1981 exhumation, cut off the head, and replaced it with Oswald's real nugget, presumably located and retrieved from somewhere deep in Russia. Fittingly, this is known as the head in a box theory. Michael Eddowes says that did he have a right? In his book, Khrushchev Killed Kennedy, and Eddowes argued that Kennedy was killed by a Soviet agent impersonating Lee Harvey Oswald. The following year, Eddowes published November 22nd, How They Killed Kennedy, which in the book he claims the assassination was an act of political sabotage. To test this theory, Eddowes brought up a suit in Texas to exhume Oswald's body, and this was originally refused, but after gaining the support of Lee Harvey Oswald's family, the exhumation took place. At a news conference held later, the following statement was issued. The findings of the team are as follows. We independently as a team have concluded beyond any doubt, that the individual buried under the name of Lee Harvey Oswald in Rose Hill Cemetery is in fact Lee Harvey Oswald. Eddowes also issued a statement, though surprised, I am no way disappointed in the apparent disproving of my evidence of imposture. Rather, I have accomplished my objective in obtaining the exhumation, and I am glad for those who have steadfastly maintained the contrary for whatever reason. So these are his books on JFK, and he confirms that that was the body. Now picture this, the theater in Texas Theater, do innocent people take guns to the movies, assault a police officer, and try to shoot him? Does an innocent person start a fight with an armed policeman, then act surprised and angry when the policeman and others defend one of their own? Well, the problem here is he had a gun because he did have one. He is buried here because we buried him intact on November 25th. When you shine light on it, but is that really true? Lee Harvey Oswald was set up to be a patsy in death, and smoking gun evidence was released because of that. Here are 3 pieces of evidence from Office Navy Intelligence. Detective Paul Buntley receives vital information. 2 days after the assassination, he received a letter from Robert D. Steele, commander, in which Steele wrote Bentley, perhaps you are aware that ONI has quite a file on Oswald, which no doubt has been made available on the Washington level. If not, I am certain that this information can be obtained for you through our resident special agent in charge of the Dallas office. And another one of which he and Alan Sweat headed up for the Texas Association of Polygraph Examiners. Bentley was of Oswald's arresting officers, had searched Oswald's wallet on the way back to Stanton. And in his report, he stated, on the way to City Hall, I removed the subject's wallet and obtained his name. There's no mention of Hidell whatsoever, and ditto the other 4 cops in the car were never called to testify by the Warren Commission. So was Roscoe White Mandarin? Well, let's look at his quotes. Honey, it's like war. The president is a national security threat. If I don't do it, we'll be in a nuclear war very soon. And another one by to his pastor Jack Shaw. Kennedy has been a pretty good president, but he has to die. All of these are direct quotes from him, of which this is from Navy intelligence coded to White in the first place. This memo was the first one. This contracts are within the department code for other people within the department will help. One of the best ways to ensure security is to have all people in small groups on a need-to-know basis. Office of Naval Intelligence is also suspect for being somehow involved, not for any one reason, but for an increasingly accumulating body evidence that implicates it in the assassination drama. For starters, the two victims, John F. Kennedy and John Connally, as well as their alleged attacker Lee Harvey Oswald, had Navy backgrounds. So here is the second cable, in which foreign affairs assignments have been canceled. The next assignment is to eliminate a national security threat to worldwide peace. Eliminate the national security threat? Well, this is a clear reference to the MAD threat. We would need to get rid of JFK to end this national security threat. That was the only way possible. Well, Robert Steele letter to Detective Bentley about Oswald dated the day he died. Perhaps you're aware that ONI has quite a file on Oswald. Well, as a personal friend, I congratulate you and wish you continued success and pray that your guardian angel will remain close at hand and vigilant as always. So Ricky White explained that his father left documents to prove all of these things were true. Roscoe Anthony was a covert U.S. intelligence operative, as he has stated before, and all of these things do add up, as you can see from the cables. The National Enquirer, in their own words, said this: a panel of its alumni on the 90th birthday, past and present, recount the secret history of America's original tabloid. From Elvis to Jacko, Cherub, Bert, Brad, and Angie, the National Enquirer has recorded the scandalous and entertaining ups and downs of Tinseltown, along with notorious individuals such as O.J. Simpson, Gary Hart, and John Edwards. The Enquirer nuclearized the tabloid formula, pushed the boundaries for good taste, and gave the people what they wanted: the unvarnished but highly sensationalized truth. Noted journalism historian Christopher Tennant. For better and certainly for worse, things we consider mainstream today could not exist and would not exist without it. So Ted Cruz pulls out of the race for president. Their core conclusion right from the start has been that Oswald killed JFK alone, as reported in major media stick with Oswald lone gun JFK theory. Yet many serious researchers, law enforcement, and scientific whistleblowers and other suppressed voices have long argued that Oswald was a scapegoat and may even have been innocent of killing JFK or a Dallas policeman that day. Critics of the 1964 Warren Commission draw on a vast array of evidence to show involvement, often compartmentalized by those who did not know the ultimate result of their actions. So the National Enquirer is not a reliable source. The CBS is reliable and the most trusted source of news. Because look at this. This is a tragedy in Dallas. And CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite cried as he gave the nation its news. The Kennedy assassination took place on Friday, November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas at 12:30 p.m. Kennedy was fatally wounded by gunshots while riding in a presidential motorcade. Project Mongoose, were we being set up even here? Are we supposed to take the words of bought-off journalists before the American public? Well, mainstream media is the real fake news that we have today. The election may be over, but this week's tabloids see it as their constitutional duty to continue slinging political mud. These are multiple posts of fake news. These are real fake news that we have. But why are Americans suckers for conspiracy theories? So says Professor Sir Richard Evans of the University of Cambridge, is leading a project into conspiracy theories and is Britain's leading authority of the subject matter. There is an argument that conspiracy theories are built into American culture because that is how America started. The United States was founded on conspiracy theories. The London government was conspiring to deprive America of their liberties. The problem with this theory was that it wasn't true. It is not a conspiracy if it's true. Was the British government conspiring to raise taxes on the American colonists to pay for the French War? Were there more than one person in Parliament doing this? Then we have just proven the British professor wrong. The conspiracy was true. So we began with the question, who is Gary Welsh and why is his death important? Well, we will end with the answer right now. He was a 53-year-old attorney who blogged, and he was murdered outside of his apartment. The police said it was suicide, and he had given the National Enquirer two major political stories, one on Marco Rubio and the other on Ted Cruz. Shortly after the stories broke, they both dropped out of the presidential campaign, and many say that the National Enquirer is fake news. But if it's fake, why did Gary die in the first place? Could it simply be that the National Enquirer is fake because the fake media says that it's fake? Well, the truth is out there, so don't fake us out.